This week on Q&A, our guest is T.R. Reid, author of the new book, The Healing of America, A Global Quest for Better, Cheaper, and Fairer Health Care.
Tom Reid, author of The Healing of America, A Global Quest for Better, Cheaper, and Fairer Health Care. When was the first moment you can remember thinking about this issue?
I tell you exactly. I've lived around the world, and if you tell your kids you're moving to another country, they say, "Oh God, you're wrecking my life. How could you do that?" We moved to London in 1998. Our kids said, "You're wrecking my life." So Peggy and I said, "Okay, we'll make the transition as easy as possible. We'll loose them on London, and they can do anything they want to make it easy." Sure enough, my 13-year-old goes over to Camden Town. This is the neighborhood where Bob Cratchit lived, pretty dodgy neighborhood, and finds some store selling for 10 pounds brass earrings. You have to have pierced ears. And the guy says, "Oh, no problem, mate." Pierces her ears. 2 days later, she wakes up and her ear is swollen and oozing pus and very painful. And we'd been in the country 4 days. We didn't know where the doctor was, anything. What do you do? So we went out and got in a cab, and the cab driver says, "No problem, mate." And he took us to St. Mary's Hospital. This is on Parade Street next to Paddington Station. This is so London. You walk in that hospital and there's a gold plaque. It says, "On October 28th, 1928, Sir Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin in this hospital," which I'm sure is true. And it looked like it hadn't been painted since 1928. You know, these British hospitals, they're grody. They have buckets catching the leaking rain. Not reassuring. But we got to the casualty ward, that's the ER. A woman in a starched white uniform comes. She's matron, and that's the head of a ward in a British hospital. Matron immediately spots which of us has a problem. She takes my daughter Willa into a room. Maybe 10 minutes later, a doctor comes along. After a while, she comes out. They've drained the pus. They've cleaned it. They gave her a stern lecture on hygiene, and she was cured. She was fine. And so you can imagine how I felt. I felt great. So I walked over to Matron and pulled out my checkbook, and Matron says with great pride, "Oh, no, 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 no. You may put away your checks. We do it differently here. Free. Go home. No bill, no paperwork, no nothing, no copay, no deductible. They just give you health care." And I turned to my wife and said, "You know, there are different ways to deliver health care. They've got it figured out." So that's when I started thinking, and you know, he had lived in Japan. That's a good health care system. And I think maybe originally the idea was planted for me. I covered Ted Kennedy's race for president in 1980. And he went, everywhere he went, he said, "All the other rich countries managed to cover everybody. Why can't we?" And I got intrigued with that question. How come they can all cover everybody with high quality care, spend half as much as we do? How do they do that? And I remembered our own experiences. So that's where the book came from.
But in your book, there's something called a bad shoulder.
Yes, yeah.
Which one is it?
It's my right shoulder. I bashed it in the U.S. Navy many years ago.
How?
Well, you know, the stairway in a Navy ship is called a ladder. It's kind of a stairway, and there are certain times when only an idiot would be climbing the ladder in a submarine, and I did, and fell. I just dislocated my shoulder many times, and I was in the U.S. Navy, and they took me to Bethesda Naval Hospital and basically, literally screwed my shoulder together. There's a stainless steel screw in here. Worked fine, and over time, you know, we're getting old, Brian, and now my shoulder only goes this high. So I set off to see how other countries provide high-quality health care, and I figured, hey, while I'm going to the doctor, why not get my shoulder fixed too? So I took it to doctors all over the world.
So what year did you have this?
72.
This shoulder?
I had this procedure done, yeah.
And how many different doctors in the world have diagnosed this, what to do about your shoulder?
Oh, geez, 10, 12 countries, and many of these countries you have to go to the GP first, and then she refers you to the orthopedic surgeon. So, God, at least 20, maybe 25 docs have palpated and examined and x-rayed my shoulder.
All right, let's start with the American doctor after you got out of the Navy that you've gone to and said, what can you do about this? Where was it?
That was in Denver, Dr. Don Furlick, a great doctor, and he fixed this shoulder, which I busted skiing. Look at that movement. That's great. But this one, so I went into Don Furlick and said, you know, I really trust this doctor. He's an orthopedic surgeon. They're very, you know, confident, aggressive people. And look, that's all I can do. I can't swing a golf club anymore, you know. And, you know, he's an orthopedic surgeon. Yeah, we'll fix that. What are you going to do? He goes out of the room and he comes back with a little red box and he opens it up and said, here's your new shoulder. He's going to cut out the shoulder that God gave me and put in something made out of titanium to replace it. That's the American high-tech, aggressive way. What'll it cost? No idea. You know, the doctor in America doesn't know what he's going to be paid for his procedure. It turns out to be about a $47,000 procedure in America. And I like this doc. And I said to him, well, what can go wrong? And he said, well, you know, it's major surgery. There are always some risks. Like what? Well, you know, disease, paralysis, death. And I thought, well, maybe I get a second opinion. And actually, I got about 20 other opinions. So I took my shoulder around the world. I was trying to get a cure for this, but I was also looking for a cure for our healthcare system.
We go back to Dr. Froelich. At the time, you're not working for the Washington Post anymore.
Oh, no.
So are you on Medicare?
At that time, I was working for the Washington Post, and I had good insurance. I mean, it would have covered most of it. I think we figured out that operation would have cost me out of pocket about $1,650.
And are you in Medicare yet?
Yeah, I am on now. Yeah.
Okay, so now what would have happened if you were going to have this operation?
Well, in America, first you'd have to go to a second doctor to agree that it was necessary. And I think I'd get the operation. I don't know what it would cost. I don't know. You can't tell in America, you know.
Okay, give us another example of a doctor you visited about the shoulder. What about Japan?
Japan, that was the widest choice of care. I went to a famous orthopedic clinic at Keio University Hospital, very prestigious clinic. Called them up and said, could I get an appointment? My shoulder hurts. Can you come in this afternoon? Because you don't wait in Japan. They don't have waiting lines. That afternoon, I was in the office of Dr. Nakamichi, a very famous orthopedic surgeon, and he palpates and pushes. He did something that no other doctor in the world did. He called up my condition on his computer and read about it while he was treating me, which was kind of reassuring to me. He's an expert, but he just wanted to check. In Japan, their insurance would pay for the broadest range of treatment. He would have given me the operation. He would have given me, you know, months or years of physical therapy. He suggested monthly cortisone shots, which would have been free in Japan. But in Japan, they'll also do traditional Chinese medicine. They gave me acupuncture. They'll give you herbal remedies. All that's covered by Japanese insurance. And in Japan, that operation, it would cost $10,000, but my copay would have been about $65.
Explain that, though. What insurance would have covered that in Japan? Would have been your Washington Post insurance?
Yeah, or if I'd lived in Japan, it would have been my corporate insurance, or you can also get insurance municipally. In Japan, they have private plans, and then they have what's called the public option. You can get it from the municipal government, too.
What's it cost a year on the public option?
The premiums are not cheap. They're cheaper than in America. I think for a working person like you and me, for a family of four, it's about $400 a month. And then the employer pays as well.
All right. You have an example in here of an Indian doctor that treated you.
Yeah, I did a film for PBS Frontline about traditional Indian medicine called Ayurveda. It's a 3,000-year-old medicine. And so we took my shoulder to southern India, to the Mayo Clinic of Ayurveda. And
it's not really a Mayo, though. It's just...
No, it's the most famous Ayurvedic clinic in the world. The Ayurveda Chikitsalayam is what it's called. And they don't cut. You know, your body is going to heal yourself in Ayurveda. And basically, it's an ancient herbal and laying on of hands kind of medicine. So what you do is you lie on this dark wood, neem wood table, and 6 guys massage you with warm oil. I mean, it was sweet. I did it every day for 5 weeks. It was just...
You were in India for 5 weeks?
Yeah, I was making a movie for PBS Frontline, so they covered this whole thing. And at this Chikitsalayam, at the clinic, they gave me a suite. It had my own massage chamber in my hospital suite, all my meals, $42 a day, including all the treatment. And basically, they take these oils and they put these herbs and medications in them and rub you. It's kind of like being a rotisserie chicken, you know, they're rubbing oil on your skin. And it was great, and they did it for 5 weeks, and at the end, I didn't believe in any of this, and they made me, every day they made me go over to the Hindu temple and walk 3 times around the statue of Dhanwantari, the god of healing. I didn't buy any of that stuff, right? Guess what? It worked. I got more movement and less pain, and they told me if I just stay 5 more weeks, I'd do even better, you know.
What year was this?
That was 2007. And we made a movie, and most of this movie, I'm lying there being massaged by these guys. And so now I walk down the street in America, and you know, this is one of those films they show at 2:30 in the morning. Every insomniac in America has seen it, you know.
You know, I always tell my kids what a tough job it is to be a foreign correspondent, but they never believe me.
And I walk down the street, and people come up to me, and they say one of 2 things. Either, how's your shoulder, or I saw you naked. That's what I get, because that's a lot of nude scenes of me in that film. I was being massaged, you know.
Completely nude.
Yeah, they fuzzed. You know, they pixelated. But yeah, I didn't realize I was getting into it, and I agreed to this. But basically, it was sweet. And I didn't buy the religious background. I didn't buy any of this stuff, but it worked. There's no question I got improvement.
But if you lived in India, what would it have cost you?
Probably the same $42 a day, although that's a significant amount of money for most people in India.
How do Indians get their health care?
India is basically a developing nation, a third world country, can we say, and in those countries there basically isn't a healthcare system. The system in those countries is called the out-of-pocket system, which means if you have the money to pay the doctor, you get treated. If you don't have any money, which most people in India don't, you stay sick or you die. That's the system in all third world countries. It's brutal, it's simple, and that's the fact.
By the way, which is the program you had the falling out with, where they didn't use you and then you walked out of the, walked away from it?
So I made 2 films for PBS Frontline in which I'm reporting this book. One was this Indian film, A Second Opinion, and the other was called Sick Around the World, where I go to the doctor in 5 countries to see how healthcare works.
Some people say it's politically impossible to fix a healthcare system. And in fact, the last time we tried it in 1994, the result was disastrous failure. But that same year, here in Switzerland, a country famous for huge insurance companies and drug companies, they did take on healthcare reform and change the system. Today, they have universal coverage with high quality. We've come to Switzerland to see why they made the change and how it's working.
And those were pretty successful films. So then we made Sick Around America, and we took a look at American healthcare and worked months on it. And, you know, I'm the on-air guy. They call you the talent. Did you know this? I'm the talent. I don't have any, but... So I did my bit, which was going around interviewing everybody. We spent months on it. And then the producers go to Boston, where Frontline is, and put all this together into a documentary film. And maybe after 6 or 7 weeks of editing, they sent me the movie, and I looked at it, and it was wrong. I just thought it was wrong as a matter of health policy. They suggested that the solution to our healthcare problem was to mandate everybody into private, for-profit American health insurance. And no other country would do that. No other country would allow the kind of things that our insurance companies do. So I said to them, that's wrong. That contradicts our film. It contradicts my book, and I don't agree with this. And they didn't want to change it. They were happy with their movie. That's their right. You know, it's their film. And I didn't want to be in their movie, so we had an amicable parting of the ways, and I dropped out.
So you're through dealing with them after this?
Not only am I through dealing with them, I think I'm persona non grata at Frontline for all time. I don't think they're going to put T.R. Reid in another film.
Did that surprise you that it was that severe at the end?
Surprised me, yeah. It stunned me. I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to disagree on health policy, but they were pretty angry at me for withdrawing from their film.
Are you going to do any more television?
Yeah, it turns out if you have a big public fight with Frontline, lots of other producers come and ask you to do movies. So I'm going to make some more documentaries. And it's fun work. You know, it's like being a reporter. I think it's easier. You have a producer to do a lot of the work for you, a lot of stuff that a reporter would do himself if you work for the Washington Post. So I like it. I think I will do more, but I will place you bet it won't appear on PBS Frontline because I'm a bad guy there.
Let's get a T.R. Reid update. We've talked over the years a lot of times, and most of the time you've been with the Washington Post. Where do you live now?
I live right in the heart of Denver, very near where you teach at the University of Denver, as you know. Yep.
How many years did you work for the Washington Post?
Gee, about 30. And we worked around the world, but as you remember, I married Peggy McMahon, a Denver native, and she always said, let's go home. And the Post very kindly twice made me the Rocky Mountain Bureau Chief in Denver. They were good about that. And that was my last job. But now newspapers don't have bureaus in Denver. You know, people just can't afford that kind of thing. So they shut down their bureau, and I was getting into making films and writing more books. So I've left the Washington Post.
I picked up something on a blog out there, or either that or an online magazine, 5280, I think it's called, where they said a couple things that I didn't know. One, that you're a Democrat, and two, that you were interested in being appointed to the legislature in Colorado.
Yeah.
One, the Democrat is right.
Now, yeah, I registered as a Democrat. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And two, did you get the seat?
No. My state rep from our district in Denver was the leader in the Colorado legislature on health care policy. And she quit the job and took something else. And a bunch of people came to me, because I'm doing health policy, and said, why don't you try for that? And I did apply for the job, but I didn't get it. And you know what? I have to say the guy they picked is great. It's better than I would have been, so I can't complain about it.
Can they appoint legislators?
Well, yeah, they don't have a special election for legislators. And here's my argument. I think if a legislator quits in midterm, they should make her pay for the special election to replace her. But as a matter of fact, they don't. And lots of people, and many state legislators, get the job that way. And then once you're incumbent, you tend to win.
Will you run for an office out there?
I might do that. If people come to me, I think the goal for American health policy is universal coverage at reasonable cost. That's where we have to get. That's where all the other rich countries are. I'm not sure our national government is going to get there. I mean, this summer is not promising. I think it might happen on a state-by-state basis. You read my chapter about Canada. What happened in Canada is one province in Canada, Saskatchewan, it's a lot like Colorado. You know, it's half plains and half mountains. There are no rivers out there, so the borders are straight lines. It's Colorado, you know. They elected a very lefty governor. It's called the Premier in Canada. And he said everybody in our province should have health care. Everybody should have health care. So he set up a state-run single-payer system. This was in 1944. Tommy Douglas was this man's name. He called it Medicare, and it worked. All of a sudden, everybody in Saskatchewan had medical care. Lots of doctors came there because they knew they'd get paid. And the other provinces saw it, and gradually, one by one, two by two, they copied it. They saw that it was working. And by 1961, it was so popular that the people of Canada demanded that the federal government establish it coast to coast. But it started in one state. Tommy Douglas did this. And then in 2004, the Canadian Broadcasting Company did a poll to pick the greatest Canadian in history, millions of voters. And the candidates included Wayne Gretzky, Alexander Graham Bell, they claim him, Pierre Trudeau, who was their JFK, all that.
Lauren Green, Anne Murray.
Yeah, all that, yeah. And the winner was Tommy Douglas. The winner was Tommy Douglas. And I have talked about this topic to several state legislators, and I always say, you know, if you would institute a healthcare system in your state that worked, you'd be elected the best American in history, because that's what happened in Canada. So now I think what's going to happen is we will get to universal coverage on a by state experimentation, and some state will get it right and the others will copy. And one reason that can happen is in whatever bill comes out of Congress this year, there's going to be a state waiver clause. I think that's going to be in there that gives them waivers against national laws like ERISA, leaves a lot more room for experimentation. I'll bet you that next January, 25 states at least will have bills in the state legislature to try to get to universal coverage on a state level. If some state makes it work, everybody will copy it.
What's ERISA?
ERISA is the National Pension and Insurance Regulating law, and it has many desirable features. It requires that employers treat all their employees the same for health care. They can't charge Betty more than they charge George, kind of thing. And that makes it hard, and it's a national law, so it makes it hard for a state to change the rules of health insurance or health payment. So they're going to give waivers on that law. That's in the statute that's probably going to pass Congress.
Kaiser Family Foundation, Health Foundation and all, how does that play into you? You mentioned that in here. Did they underwrite you for this?
They did. It's a wonderful organization, and they fund and finance and do a lot of health policy research. They're very good at this. And I went to them and said, hey, I got this very expensive project. This is before I was making the movie. Can you help me? And they helped me. And not only did they give me money, they gave me the kind of cachet you need to go overseas and see the health minister. People in Germany have heard of Kaiser. So they helped me a great deal. And then the best thing that happened was when PBS Frontline signed me up to make this movie. So here's the deal. In all these European countries and most Asian countries, the public broadcasting services, the big broadcaster, that's the powerful guy, NHK, BBC. And so if you go to, say, Switzerland and say, I'm from American PBS, they think you're really important. You're a big shot, bigger than NBC or something. They're just private. So I went to Switzerland and said to them, I'm from American PBS, and I'd like to interview your health minister. And they said, PBS, talk to our president. Which I did. I talked to 2 presidents of Switzerland last time and the current one. So that helped a lot. But to see doctors, to see healthcare economists, it was quite useful to say, I'm here under the imprimatur of the Kaiser Family Foundation. People know it, and that helped me a great deal.
There's some names involved with the foundation. I want you to tell us how much they got involved in this. On the board, Bill Frist.
I know Bill Frist, but he didn't have anything to do with this book.
Cokie Roberts is on the board?
Yeah, nothing.
Donna Shalala?
Nothing.
David Satcher, the former Surgeon General?
No. Drew Altman, who's the boss of Kaiser, he was very helpful to me. He's smart as a whip, and he knows health policy. He helped me a lot.
But there is another name that you mentioned several times, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. Uwe Reinhardt?
Yeah, Uwe, the great Uwe Reinhardt.
Princeton?
He's healthcare economist at Princeton. He's marvelous. Here's what happened. I signed up to do this book. I started in 2006. Well, that's a pretty nice idea. I'd just go to other rich countries and see how they do healthcare. Signed a contract, got a pretty decent advance, and then I realized how big it was. It's a huge, it's so complicated. In the fall of 2006, I taught a course at Princeton, and I was kind of leafing through the catalog the day I got there. And here's a course called the Woodrow Wilson School, WWS 597. It's a graduate seminar, and the title is The Political Economy of Healthcare Systems. That's my book, So I walked over, and it's a pretty formidable topic, and the syllabus looked very difficult, and charts and economics, And I walked in, and within 2 minutes, I knew it was going to be a great course because this Uwe Reinhardt is just a marvelous teacher. And he knows everything, and he became my guru. And I can say to Uwe, how do they keep costs down for major surgery in Germany? And he'll say, well, they had the commission 4 years ago. He knows everything. He's really good. And then he knows the healthcare economists in every country. So I'm going to take a look at the British system. Oh, you need to talk to Dr. Alan Maynard at University of Birmingham. He knows them. So if you're a journalist, you need that. And I'll tell you something, you'll really like this. I could have kissed Uwe Reinhardt. At one point, this is so hard, I said to Uwe, you really ought to, why don't we write this book together? And he said, no, look, I'm an economist. Nobody can understand us. You guys, you journalists, you can explain it to people. I could have kissed him because that's what we all think. Academics are deep and smart, but we can say things in English in a way people can understand.
He was born in Germany?
He was born in Germany, and he grew up in Canada, so he knows those systems. And as I say in my book, at one point, Uwe has been advocating for universal coverage in America for a long, long time. And at one point, he wrote a letter to the Journal of the American Medical Association, their journal, and said, I just want to pose a simple question. In America, if the child of a rich family and the child of a poor family both contract the same disease, should they both have access to the same care to treat it? Now, his answer would be yes. In every other country, rich country in the world, the answer would be yes. Of course, rich people and poor people get the same care. All these doctors wrote in and said, tell Uwe Reinhardt to take his socialist views elsewhere. I mean, doctors wrote in and said the answer is no. No, we shouldn't do that. You wouldn't get that answer in any other country. All the other countries have made what I think is a moral decision, an ethical decision. Everybody who needs health care should have access to care.
We go back to that, but I want to take your shoulder to Germany.
Yeah, okay.
What happened there?
Germany is good high-tech medicine, and the doctor in Germany, you have to go to the GP first.
If I call your office and say, oh, my shoulder kind of hurts, I'm not sure what's wrong, how long would it take me to see you?
1 or 2 weeks. If
2
it's
weeks,
serious,
I see.
same day.
Serious same day,
Yes.
yeah. If I come in here and you look at my shoulder and say, well, I think maybe an orthopedic specialist should look at it, then how long would I have to wait to see that?
It's different. Perhaps another week or 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
What if the orthopedic specialist said, well, we have to operate on your shoulder? Do you know how long I would have to wait for that?
Not too long. 3 weeks.
3
4
weeks
weeks
before I could get in.
I guess.
And then she would send me to the orthopedic surgeon. And he, palpated and examined and all that. And he could have done the operations recommended in America. He didn't think it was my need. My big problem is limited movement. The operation is better for people with a lot of pain. So in Germany, they proposed a regular regime of physical therapy, which of course would be free in Germany. And,
Why free?
In Germany, health care is paid for. You have to pay an insurance premium, but it's paid for by health insurance. And traditionally in Germany, nobody ever paid a copay. There wasn't any. You paid your insurance, but then in Germany, you don't even get a bill. And then in 2006, all countries are having problems with the cost of health care, like we are. So Germany came up with this shocking change, and that is once a quarter, every 3 months, you have to pay a copay to go to the doctor, 10 euros, 14 bucks. And once you pay that in January, all health care is covered for the next 3 months. And if you have to come back on April 2nd, they make you pay another 10 euros. This doctor I went to in Germany told me that she thought this was so funny. There was an American expat living in her town, and he came in, with a hangnail or something in early January, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry, Bruce, you now have to pay 10 euros. Well, he's American, okay, here, right? And then he came back in late February with some other problem, and she says, he tried to pay me again. He'd already paid for that quarter. She says to me, I don't get this. Do Americans pay every time they go to the doctor? Is that what happens in your country? How could that be like that? So in Germany, I would have paid the 10 euro copay, and everything else would have been free.
So in Germany, if I worked in Germany and I didn't have insurance, didn't pay for insurance, what would happen to me?
Well, it's taken out of your pay. You don't have the choice not to have
But if I didn't have a
insurance.
job?
If you don't have a job, well, then the government takes the role of your employer, and the government pays the employer's part of the premium. And if you don't have enough money to pay your half of the premium, the government does that too. Most people in Germany get health insurance through the employer, and they split the cost between the employee and the employer. This is called the Bismarck model. It was invented by the chancellor, the first chancellor of Germany, Adolf von Bismarck. 150 million Americans are on that plan. The difference is in Germany, the big difference is if you lose your job, you keep your insurance. The government takes over and pays your employer's part of the premium. And many people in Europe, they're all mystified by our healthcare system. Believe me, they can't figure it out. Why would a rich country leave so many people uninsured? But as I say in the book, the health minister of Sweden said to me once, I was pretty friendly with her, I spent a lot of time with her. She said, Mr. Reid, could you explain something to me, something I don't quite understand about your country? What? And she says, well, in Sweden, we feel when you lose your job, that's when you really need health insurance. But in your country, when you lose your job, they take away your health insurance. Why would you do that? You got an answer for that one, Brian? I've never figured that out myself. That's arguably the cruelest of all the cruel twists of American healthcare policy. When you need insurance most is when you lose it. That can't happen in any other country.
Your shoulder is now in France.
In France, yeah, so the doctor puts my x-ray up on the light machine, the orthopedic surgeon. And as I said, they put a stainless steel screw in my shoulder at Bethesda Naval Hospital. This guy sees that, big smile on his face. You know why? That's a French procedure. The French invented the operation. It's called the Latarjet procedure that I had at Bethesda Naval Hospital. So here comes this American shoulder with a French screw in it. He was so pleased. It was like seeing an old friend on the street, you know. And he, too, told me, he said, you could have this procedure done in France. It would cost 5,000 euros, about $6,000, of which I would have paid 60 bucks out of pocket, that's all. But he also said, I don't think it's indicated for you. He suggested physical therapy or maybe pain pills or something if it were hurting. He would have done it. He said, you can definitely find an orthopod in France who will do it because he's going to get 5,000 euros for doing it. But he didn't recommend it.
Who says that France is the #1 medical healthcare
system in the world? The World Health Organization did a big 4-year study of all the health systems in the world, 191 countries. They hired a professor at Harvard, Dr. Christopher Murray, to do this. And he was afraid that this was going to be just one more 4-year study that comes out in a big study and somebody puts it on a shelf and nobody ever reads it. How could he get attention for his study? So they came up with this scheme. We'll rate each of the healthcare systems in the world on grounds of quality and fairness. They rated them from 1 through 191, and France came in first. So they rated it as #1. And is it best in the world? I don't know. I think it's a very good healthcare system. Their results are great. They live longer and healthier than Americans do and spend maybe 60% of what we do on healthcare per capita.
Let me offer some kickback on some of the things you're saying just to see what your reaction is. The World Health Organization is basically the UN.
Yes, yes.
Most of the organizations that belong to the UN and have control of this will be this universal health care. They would not be disposed to like anything America does.
Yeah, that's wrong. In the first place, there are 191 countries in the World Health Organization, and only about 40 of the world's richest countries have any healthcare system at all. All the others are on this out-of-pocket system we described, where if you can pay the doctor, you get treated. So most of them would be developing countries. And yeah, I've heard this before. It's in Geneva. It's a bunch of Swiss, French people. Of course, they don't like America. No. They hired Chris Murray at Harvard, and Julio Frank, who was the health minister of Mexico, did this study for them. It was not done by Europeans. Conservatives
are going to say Harvard, bunch of liberals, they want universal health care.
Yeah, you can make that argument, I guess. The big problem with America, as you know, we were notoriously rated 37th in that ranking. And the major reason was fairness, and they're right on fairness. Some Americans get absolutely world-class care, as good as anybody, better than the French. The problem is we leave tens of millions of people outside the door. They don't get treated. According to the National Academy of Sciences, about 20,000 Americans die every year of treatable diseases because they can't afford a doctor. We meet one on the first page of my book. You know how many people in France die of treatable diseases? 0. Germany, 0. Britain, 0. No other country lets it happen. According to the Harvard School of Public Health, about 700,000 Americans go bankrupt every year from medical bills. Medical bankruptcies around the world, Japan, 0, Canada, 0, Britain, 0, Germany. Other countries don't let that happen. So in terms of the fairness of our system, that's where we get rated down.
A GP, a general practitioner, a family doctor makes, I don't know, $140,000 a year on average, something like that?
Yeah, a little higher than that in America, yeah.
What does a GP make in France?
$60,000. The fellow I spent a week with makes $60,000, and that's about average.
Japan?
He probably makes $80,000 a year.
Germany?
She makes closer to $100,000, maybe $90,000 a year.
You point out often that their education is paid for by the government.
Yeah, most of them, in most countries, medical school is free, or if there is a tuition, your local government pays. There are malpractice premiums. I asked this doctor, the doctor I spent time with in Japan has a clinic with 9 beds in it. He's running a hospital. And I said to him, what's your malpractice premium? You know, any doctor in America knows that off the, gosh, what is my malpractice? I have no idea. He calls the office manager. She says, well, that's included in the dues for the Japan Medical Association, $30 a month. That's his malpractice premium, and he'll never be sued. So they make less, but you know, they're cost burden. They don't have a big loan to pay off when they start. I think the fundamental difference is their expectations are lower. Doctors in France and Germany and Japan don't expect to make $500,000 a year and drive a Lexus to the country club. It's not their, they want to help people. They're people who like biology, they like science. You know, all doctors everywhere I've met in our country and other countries complain that they're not paid enough. Everybody says that, but they're comfortable middle-class people, and they're comfortable with that, and they're helping people, you know, they're curing illness. That feels pretty good.
If you set out to write a book that would show the American medical system in the best of lights, what would you do? How would you tell that story? I mean, basically what you've done in your book is say that our numbers stink in every poll you show here.
Yeah, no, that's true. Certainly coverage we're bad at. Cost, we're the worst in the world. It's kind of striking that even on quality, on results, we rate lower than most of the other rich countries. That kind of surprised me.
Even on life's longevity, I mean, you show us 50-something or whatever.
Yeah, well, we're at 77, but the other rich countries are at 79 or 82 or something like that. So neonatal death, the death in the first year of life, were 2 or 3 times worse than all the other rich countries. That seems outrageous to me. A rich country can't keep its babies alive. I can't stomach that one. But I could tell you a million great things. We should have the best healthcare system in the world. We definitely have the best medical schools, nursing schools, and pharmaceutical schools. We have certainly world-class and maybe world-leading medical research. I'm absolutely convinced that our hospitals are the best in the world. I mean, they're the finest facilities. They care for you. They have all sorts of people treating you. All that stuff, facilities, training, skill, nobody can match us. The problem is the system people have to work in. The payment system is just really badly screwed up. It's very expensive and it's extremely unfair. And we just haven't allocated these resources equally. All the other countries started by saying, we want everyone in our country who needs a doctor to have access. And for some reason, and as you know, I struggle with this question in the book, we never have. The richest country in the world has never made that commitment. I talked to I'm pretty tough on Canada in my book, as I said, because they keep you waiting so long. Long waiting lines. And I was talking to a minister in Canada, and I said, you know, you keep people waiting. How can you call this good health care? You have to wait months to see a doc, a specialist. And his answer was, look, Canadians don't mind waiting so much as long as the rich Canadian and the poor Canadian have to wait about the same amount of time. And, you know, that is their national culture. They're very egalitarian. And we don't have that ethic. It's a standard in America that rich people are going to get better health care than poor people. No other country lets that happen.
You know, if you talk, though, to people that run Mayo or run Cleveland Clinic and all these places, they'll tell you that the big 737 fly in from Saudi Arabia and all over the world to get their people treated there. You talk about the Canadians all the time. If you're listening to conservatives talk about that, say the Canadians are coming over the border to get treated.
Yeah.
What did you find there?
No, there are good studies on these Canadian snowbirds. There aren't many of them. There are a few of them. The Canadians claim that more Americans go north across the border to get treated or to get drugs than Canadians come here. It's a pretty small number either way. It's certainly true that Arab oil sheiks fly to Johns Hopkins or the Mayo Clinic for treatment because, as I say, at the top, nobody can match America. We have the best care in the world and the best medical schools, the best research. We just haven't made it available to all Americans. And that's the fundamental difference between our country and all the others.
You did France and Japan and Canada and Britain.
Germany.
Did you do Italy? Italy's up there pretty high.
Yeah, Italy and Spain rate high. Those are both British-style systems, which I think Americans would call socialized medicine, in that it's called the Beveridge model. In the British model, healthcare is the government's job. I think that's socialized. The government owns the hospitals, it employs most of the doctors, and pays all the bills. You don't get a bill in those countries.
But you pay it in taxes.
You pay in taxes. Yeah, they definitely pay for health care. They pay less than we do, you know, because their per capita rate is about half of what we pay. But yeah, they definitely pay for health care, but you don't get a bill. That's the the so-called beverage model, and I'd call that socialized medicine, wouldn't you? The striking thing is, in many other rich countries, Germany, France, Belgium, Japan, they're private. In fact, in some cases, more private, less socialized than America. In Germany, the doctors are private, the hospitals are private, the labs are private, drug companies are private, and the insurance plans are private. And everybody stays with private insurance cradle to grave. They don't have a Medicare for old people. I argue that that's less socialized than the U.S.
So how much of all this in this country is the profit? Whether it's the drug companies or the hospitals. I know Kaiser is nonprofit.
Yeah, nonprofit, yeah.
But
yeah.
Hospital Corporation of America, the biggest of all.
That's a for-profit. You know, when you're talking about the costs and profits, in my book, I divide healthcare into the providers, docs, hospitals, drug companies, and the payers, the insurance system. Most countries have decided that it's okay for the providers to be for-profit. There's some competition there. But all the other countries have decided that the payment system, whether it's government or private, has to be nonprofit. That's a fundamental distinction with the United States. So how much does that contribute? The American health insurance companies are the least efficient payers in the world. They have administrative costs. They report this to the SEC every quarter. Administrative costs 18 or 20% of premium dollars. So they add 20% to every doctor bill they pay. In France, which is private, basically private insurance, their administrative costs are 4%. Germany, 5%. Japan, about 5 to 5.5%. Canada's payment system, as I said, is government. It's a bunch of lazy, overfed government bureaucrats, right? Their administrative costs 5.5%, 1/4 of what our insurance companies pay.
Did you say that Medicare was 3%?
Yeah, Medicare says 3%. That's right. Well, you know, there's no marketing in Medicare, no marketing costs. They don't deny claims, and they don't make a profit, and that all keeps administrative costs down.
So what about the doctors? I mean, shouldn't they be allowed to make? I mean, some of them make a lot of money, but a lot of them just make that. They make money. I mean, a lot of money in this system compared to others, but very few of them make the several $1 million a year.
That's right. Not many do, but doctors do very well in America. They're the best paid doctors in the world. There's no question about it. And
are they the best doctors in the world?
They're certainly the best educated. But, you know, our results, as I say, let's see, in terms of recovery rates from major disease, we're kind of mediocre. Neonatal death, I told you, we're the worst of all the rich countries. Yeah, so we have very good doctors, very well-trained doctors, a lot of high-tech medicine, but we're about equal with the other countries. I don't think we're remarkably better.
How much of this, I mean, is the 11 million illegals that come to the country and don't pay anything, and they're not registered, and they're given health care, and they're figured in these averages?
Yeah, there's some of that. The big problem in America, the reason the averages are low, is all the people who can't get care. So you take recovery rates from lupus, which is a chronic disease that strikes young women, and it's a serious disease, but modern medicine knows how to manage it. If you get the right care, you'll live to be 75 if you have lupus. And in other rich countries where everybody gets care, they do. But in America, somebody without insurance who gets lupus is in very serious trouble, and they die young, much younger in America. Same with asthmatics. Die much younger in America than in other countries. Not because the rich ones do fine, they get care, but a lot of poor people get asthma who can't get the medical care they need, and they die much younger in our country.
Talk about this book. When did you complete your research?
It took me, oh gosh, more than 3 years to do this book. It was much harder than I thought. I missed the deadline by 18 months. My editor beat up on me for a year. Let's go, where's this book? And of course, my claim now is that I always knew that in the summer of 2009, our country would be obsessed with health policy and would want to know how other countries do it. And so it's not true. It's sheer luck that I brought out the book at the right time. But no, I'm claiming that I saw this coming. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
How many different days were you on the road?
Months. I was...
Take your wife with you?
A couple of trips. Yeah, a couple of trips.
Your kids? How old are your kids now?
I tried to get my kids to go. I don't think any of my kids went, but they lived with me. You know, they lived with us in Japan and Britain, so they were kind of the guinea pigs for this book. I took them to the NHS hospitals. And,
how old are they now?
34, 27, and 25. One of my kids was, she's a runner, and she was running in an American, a female runner has to get a blood test to test her mercury level. This matters, you know. Iron level, I'm sorry, iron level.
Where do they have to do that? Here?
Yeah, anywhere. Anywhere female runners need to do this. And so my daughter was a competitive runner in Britain, and she finishes high school and comes to college in America and calls me up, and she's on the team, you know, and the coach said, everybody go over to Princeton Hospital and get a blood test, right? So she calls me from the Princeton Hospital in America, I'm in London, and says, Dad, they want $120 for this blood test. I don't know what a blood test costs. And I said to her, well, that sounds okay. What do you pay in Britain? She said, Dad, I go to the Royal Free Hospital. I've never paid a penny for medical care. You know, that was her idea of what medical care should be like. So that's kind of addictive if you think about it, free health care, and then you come home and they want to actually give you a bill.
In this time that you did your research, did you have camera crews with you all the time?
Did I have what?
Camera crews with you?
When we did the PBS Frontline show, yes, I did. So I did 2 movies and had camera crews. But by then, I had been to all these countries at least once. I'd met most of the doctors and had to kind of convince these docs. I had spent a week with each of these docs, and then I had to convince them to go on camera. And some of them said, oh, yeah, I'm ready, you know, put me on. Some of them were a little shy about it and didn't want to do it. But in the end, they all did. And then we got Uwe Reinhardt to help out, and then this marvelous guy, Professor Bill Shao at Harvard. Wonderful man. He teaches at Harvard School of Public Health. He's designed about 25 countries' healthcare systems. He did Egypt, he did Cameroon, he did Taiwan. He's now designing a new healthcare system for China. He's a fantastic resource for a guy like me who wants to know how other countries do healthcare. And he went to Taiwan with us.
In the late 1980s, Taiwanese healthcare was even worse than America's is today. About half the population had no coverage at all. Hong Jen Chung was one of the officials charged with designing a new healthcare system from scratch.
Taiwan is a small island. We always look abroad internationally for ideas. Chinese saying, we say the track of the previous card is the teacher of the following card.
So if the other guy's ox cart has found a good route to universal health coverage, follow those tracks.
Follow those tracks. If they were trapped in the trouble, avoid that trap. Find a new track.
So they consulted experts from around the world and asked William Shao, a Chinese-born Harvard health economist, to head a blue ribbon panel.
And we had a wonderful moment there. He designed the Taiwanese healthcare system, which covers everybody. They basically adopted the Canadian model. And they did this in 1994. And we went to a hospital in a little fishing village on the coast. And there was a woman in the lobby of the hospital, and she was taking people's blood pressure. And I said to her, you know, Mrs. Lee, do you work here? No, I just do this as a volunteer. I'm just trying to help out. Well, why do you volunteer? Here's why. In 1980, this is before Taiwan had a healthcare system, her mother got breast cancer and died. There was no hospital in the town. There was nobody to treat her. She died at an age about 46. In 2005, Mrs. Lee, the daughter, gets breast cancer. But by now, there's a healthcare system that covers everybody, and there's a hospital in her town, and she went in there, and of course, they treated her cancer and saved her life for free. And I said to her, right over there is Professor Bill Shao from Harvard, and he designed the system that saved your life. You know, he put this hospital in your town. This Taiwanese woman, and she walks over to him in the quietest, most deferential way. She has to say to this man, thank you for saving my life. How would you say that? So here she's Chinese. She walks over to him and just gives him the most imperceptible bow, 1-inch bow, and walks away. And I thought, God, that was a perfect way in Asia to say thank you for saving my life. A great moment.
So as you watch, and we've had many, many hours on this network in the last few weeks of these town hall meetings, and you see very sincere people standing up and saying, you know,
yeah, yeah.
All the things they say about you don't mess with my health care.
Yeah.
What do you say to them? I mean, if you were up there, first of all, do you think that the members of Congress understand this?
Yeah, I think they get health care. Yeah.
But you think they understand all the ins and outs of what's going on?
Well, the guys who are saying it's all socialized nanny state overseas, they definitely don't get it. They need to read my book, to be frank, because it's not. A lot of countries, as I say, are less socialized than we are. Here's what I see is the difference between, I set out to figure out how other countries manage to cover everybody at half the cost. I think I got that in the book. But I figured out along the way there was a more important question, and that is, why do other countries cover everybody? What makes a country make the moral commitment to cover everybody? I worked hard on that one too. And if you think about that for a while, it leads to this question: why doesn't the world's richest country commit to cover everybody? Why have we never done this? And as you saw, I struggle with that in the book. I spent a lot of time worrying about that. Why is it? And I think, to me, we're just going at it from a different direction. All the other countries that I went to first decided the moral issue. Everybody in our society who needs health care can have it, and we'll find a mechanism to get there. My sense is our argument is all about the mechanism, and we've lost sight of the basic moral goal. I think if we could focus on that goal, then rather than saying, well, my insurance is okay, so the heck with you, we might say, yes, I want to find a way for my neighbors to get health care when they need it.
But if you sit back and look at these debates going on, it appears to some people that you have one side that's for universal health care saying, this is the greatest way in the world to get votes.
Oh,
I'm going to promise we're going to have universal health care, and it's not going to cost you a thing. When it's all said and done, it's not going to cost you a thing.
Yeah.
And then you have the other side saying, I worked hard all my life. I paid my health insurance.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to enjoy good health care. What do you say to them about the cynicism they have about people saying, I'm going to take care of you?
Yeah, so it's not going to cost you anything. That's baloney. It's going to cost. In all the other countries, I think a woman in France said this to me, it's true in all the other countries. The fundamental rule is, the formula is simple. Health care for everybody, paid for by everybody. That's the system. We're all going to have to pay to make sure that all our neighbors have health care. It's not going to be free. I think the argument could be that the organizations that have been the big winners in our current unfair system, this is big hospital corporations, insurance corporations, and many specialist docs, should perhaps pay more because they're sitting on more of our health care money than perhaps they should get. But the crucial point is we want everyone in our country to have health care when they want it. If we believe that, we could get there, and I know we could because all the other rich countries have done it.
We've been focusing on the Virginia Hospital Center, and they have something called a cyber knife. It's a $6 million radiation machine.
Yeah.
That is the best of the best.
Yeah.
Do you see any cyber knives as you went around the world?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Everywhere?
The notion that other countries are backward or something is just not right. No, there's a lot of there's fantastic medical innovation in America, no question about that.
Does it start here?
Yeah, a lot of it starts here. Although a lot of it comes out of universities and government. It's not all industry. Some comes from industry. But other countries with much lower cost structures have good innovation. Anybody out there who's has an artificial hip or an artificial knee or an artificial shoulder, hey, that's French technology. They invented that. This deep brain stimulation, which is the first thing they've come up with that deals with Alzheimer's, that's Canadian. Insulin is Canadian. X-rays are German.
What about the drugs? I mean,
a lot of the drugs that we see advertised on American TV come from Swiss labs or British labs or German labs, including Viva Viagra. That's a British invention.
Why is it that the drugs that are sold here can be bought for so much less money in Canada or in Europe or in Africa and places like that?
That's sheer market power. That's economic clout. In Britain, the National Health Service buys every pill, and then you get your prescription through that. And they negotiate a very good price because the drug company can't charge twice as much as anybody else, is the only buyer. And they do that in Germany, they do that in France, and therefore those countries have negotiated low prices. As I say in my book, the same pill made in the same factory costs 20 cents in Britain and $1.20 a pill in America. Same thing. And the reason is they have negotiated a price. In America, we have so many different buyers that we don't have that kind of economic clout. And of course, as you know, in Medicare Part D, the government agreed not to negotiate for a good price. They won't use their economic clout. You get pretty good drug prices in the VA. The VA gets good prices because they do use their bargaining power to get lower prices. If we did that, so here's what the drug companies say. They say, well, if you cut your prices in America, we couldn't do innovation. I'm not sure I buy that. They spend 3 times as much on marketing as they do on research, so maybe they could cut that. But why, Brian, you know, people in Japan have a higher per capita income than Americans do. Why should I subsidize them to get cheaper pills because I'm paying more? That doesn't seem right to me. Let's let the drug companies charge everybody a fair price, and then ours would go down.
Go back, though, to the looking at it from the outside, and you see politicians saying, I'm going to take care of you. And then you have the other side saying, no, you're not. You're going to end up costing me more money. I like my healthcare system now. How do you get past that? Because it seems to me that we're 50 years late in trying to sell the idea that you're talking about, because you're not going to get away from this idea that one side is going to say, you're just buying my vote.
I think it's fundamentally a moral issue, and I think that's where the argument has to be. Does a rich country have an obligation to see to it that everybody can have health care?
And the answer?
Well, in every other developed country, the answer is yes. We have an obligation and we'll do it. And the United States has never made that commitment. You know, as I say in the book, Democratic candidate for president in the election, the guy who won the campaign, said that, he said, providing health care for all our men and women is not some illusionary wish. It's a moral demand on our country. And the Democratic president who said that was Woodrow Wilson in 1912. And we've never gotten there. And I argue in the book, it's because we always lose the moral argument in the kind of noise about nanny state and socialist government, and insurance companies will lose or the hospital companies won't make as much. The other countries first made the moral commitment. We'll cover everybody, and then found a way to do it.
The book's done. It's selling.
Yeah.
It's high on the charts and all that already.
Reviews are good for once. Yeah.
You get sick today.
Yeah.
Or that shoulder is still bothering you.
Yeah.
Where in the world are you going to go?
Well, I happen to be on the board of the University of Colorado Medical School, so I'm going to go to CU Hospital, I think, and get treated. You mean of the whole world? Mm-hmm. I have access to the great care in America, so I could get it. If I didn't, I wouldn't have any trouble going to the doctor in Britain. They treated my family great when we were in the NHS.
Britain's National Health Service is dedicated to the proposition that you should never have to pay a medical bill. In the NHS, there's no insurance premium, no copay, no fee at all. The system covers everybody. And you know, when we lived here, my family got really good care from the NHS, although we often had to wait to see a doctor. And yet, the newspapers here are full of NHS horror stories, rationing, waiting lists, terrible mistakes. So I've come to London to see this NHS. Is it an answer for the U.S. or just some horrible socialist nanny state?
Japanese care is excellent, but
about French?
French care, terrific. It was quite
Any
good.
place that you went you're a little skittish about, you just soon put them lower on the list than the others?
None of the rich countries. I think they're all fine. India, I don't think I'd want to be treated in India if I could avoid it. There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm not sure their sanitary standards are as high. I don't want to demean India because I got good care in India myself. I'd do it, and I'm American. I'd go to an American doctor and I'd get great care, and I have decent insurance that would pay for it. The problem is tens of millions of our fellow citizens don't have that kind of access.
Are you buying insurance other than the Medicare now?
Yeah, I am. And you know what I'm doing? Ladies and gentlemen of America, you're subsidizing me because I bought one of these Medicare Advantage plans. And this is, you know, the history of Medicare Advantage. It was set up to prove that the private insurance companies could provide the same coverage as Medicare more efficiently. And as it turns out, they haven't been able to, and they get a subsidy from Congress. They now get about $1,400 per person per year that's paid to subsidize them so that they can provide me insurance. And it turns out it's very cheap insurance because I'm getting subsidized by the taxpayers. Now, President Obama and the Democrats in Congress have said they're going to end that. So I'm probably going to lose my sweet deal, but at the moment, I don't think it's right. But I have a very good policy that's subsidized by the taxpayers.
We've out of time.
Okay.
1 year from now,
Yeah.
will there be a health care bill that has been passed in the Congress?
A bill will pass and the Democrats will declare victory, but I don't think we're going to get to universal coverage, which is the goal. I think that's a ways away. And as I say, it might happen state by state, so 5 years from now, maybe we'll have everybody in America covered.
Last question, will you run for office as the way you feel about it now, and when?
Yeah, if I thought that we were going to do something in Colorado on a state level, I'd like to be there and work for it because I definitely want to see us cover everybody.
T.R. Reid, the name of the book is The Healing of America. We thank you for joining us.
I'm delighted, Brian, to be here. Thanks.
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at qna.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.